What's up, people? Will Clarke here. Hope you're all doing well and keeping safe out there. So on this show, I have two guys from Chicago. One is called John Curley and the other is called Joe Calderone. They are both huge parts of the Institution Club Spy Bar in Chicago. Also, they run parties all over the city. John is an old timer. Found out that he actually had a big part in Kashmir's Percolator, also who's now Green Velvet. But yeah, this podcast was really interesting. We kind of covered a load of topics from back in the day, what Chicago used to be like, to current situations going on with coronavirus, and also the situations going on the south side of Chicago and all the protests and everything else that's kind of going on right now. Hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, John Curley and Joe Calderone. And we are live. John Curley, Joe Calderone. How's it going, guys?
What's happening?
Going well.
I'm good. How's Chicago right now? I'm currently in the UK, and we've had the most insane weather today and yesterday, and it seems like we're going to get a heat wave, which is kind of nice for sunny England.
Yeah. So you made it back. I thought you were still in Detroit. I didn't know that. Because last time the three of us were together, it was at the Funky Brunch, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, right before the pandemic hit.
Joe, were you there?
It was the last we did in Chicago before Chicago just got shut down.
Joe never turns up to my shows anymore. Like, he doesn't turn up to... The last time I actually saw Joe was probably 2 years ago. Walking down, what's the avenue that I saw?
Walking down Michigan Avenue. Actually.
Michigan Ave. I was with my dad and I was with one of my friends, and it was the day when I can't remember who couldn't get into America or who kind of like the show cancelled, and you were like, "What the fuck are you doing in Chicago? Can you play at the club tonight?" And it's the first weekend off I had like in ages, and I ended up playing. But Joe doesn't turn up to my shows anymore, so it's fine. Man.
I'm looking for John's text combo to me. I had stupidly gone out the night before.
I was like, "Where are you?"
Yeah, he's like, "Yo, Will's asking about you," and I'm like, I just didn't respond. I was like, I feel like an asshole. I'm too hungover to leave.
No. Funky Brunch wasn't that long ago.
No, that was
July. So I guess that was the Sunday, March 7th.
Yeah, it was the penultimate weekend of the tour.
Yeah, and it was also like the last weekend live music happened in Chicago.
Oh, was it? Yeah, because it was St. Patrick's. Everyone was setting up for St. Patty's Day, and that didn't happen.
It was really quite surreal. We went from the day before was our Carl Cox show, and then it was your show, and then when it slowly down to like 200 people, then 50 to nothing by the following Monday.
It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely
crazy.
And it feels, the craziest part about it is it feels like a distant memory right now.
Yeah.
Right now, it feels like, I mean, so much more has happened outside of just the pandemic since then. So
2 months ago?
3 months.
3 months ago? I honestly, the longest 3 months in like, I mean, obviously the pandemic, but to John's point, like, it's like every week there's a new thing going on in the world that's like bigger than the last week.
Did you just see the earthquake that just happened in Mexico?
I did. I saw the video. Did you see the video of the ground?
Crazy.
Oh, crazy.
Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is actually going on? I don't really know. But we're still alive and kicking, which is a good thing. Yeah, look, it's crazy. If anybody isn't watching YouTube right now, then go and watch, because Joe's showing the ground in Mexico. I saw the building move. One of my friends just sent a video of like the buildings moving, and it was just like, it was almost like it was on water. I've never really seen an earthquake, but it was almost like it was like a jet, like a waterbed, and it was just like moving back and forth. It's kind of crazy.
What natural disasters do you guys have over by you?
Nothing.
You guys have nothing. We have everything.
Yeah, we're like super lucky. So I don't know if you guys have been over here, but we're known to have really bad weather. But really bad weather is nothing like bad weather in Chicago or Detroit or in the Midwest that we're used to when it's the winter. Like our bad weather, it probably gets to like -5 degrees C. We may have snow once a year, but it melts by the end of the day. It just rains a lot here, and people just like to moan about the weather. So realistically, we're pretty lucky. It's pretty easy to live here.
So, and the craziest part, like relating obviously back to the music industry, is like, John, how nuts is it trying to book out shows during the winter in the Midwest?
Well, things change like almost daily. The amount of information that's coming in, and then it's lots of misinformation too. Like just today I heard, or maybe yesterday, that Trump was going to put the nix on all European work visas. So I don't know what that means for, so you should have stayed here.
Yeah. So I one of my friends, she texted me, was like, what visa have you got? And I was like, nearly all artists have O1 or O2s, which I don't know what it means, but that's what we get. But the ones that Trump's banned is the H and the J visas, and the H and the J is for healthcare workers and food, like catering people, so like chefs and things like that, which is strange. But I guess, and don't quote me on this, but I guess the reasoning behind it is probably because there's so many unemployed people in America that they'd rather employ Americans than have anybody foreign come into the country to.
So you will be able to come back soon then.
I don't know, because I had a show booked in Vegas for 4th of July, and it didn't get cancelled, and it hadn't been cancelled, and it was like the only show that was kind of holding on by the skin of its teeth. And I found out yesterday that it's been cancelled. So I'm supposed to be playing Juarez in August, and that's probably not going to happen. I don't think Mexico's in the best of places right now. And then the other show was in like Colombia, and that's definitely not going to happen. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be October till shows are back for me. What about you guys? Let's kind of cut it back a little bit, and like how all of this, how so you guys run the world's famous Spy Bar in Chicago, which I didn't know had been open since 1995.
Yeah,
right?
what, 25 years, yeah.
Have you guys had it for that whole time? Or how's that? Where do you guys come involved with that?
So Spy Bar, like many clubs that have been open that long, have gone through various different incarnations. It wasn't the type of place it is now.
Yeah.
Back when it opened. It was more like a VIP bar with whatever tables and stuff like that. And then it's sort of morphed into what it is now, maybe 10 years into its incarnation.
Yeah.
So that being said, right now, what Spy Bar has going for it, maybe it's just a little bit smaller capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely has a staying power. It's been around a long time. People want to see it come back. But once again, there's a real fine line that you're walking when you try and put a bunch of people together, especially in a closed environment.
Yeah.
And that's particularly challenging for us when it comes to a place like Spy Bar, because they're actually they just announced today, or like a couple days ago, but the information is just coming out with all the rules and regulations that we can open up come Friday. And when I say we, I mean all indoor places can open up with either 25% capacity or 50 people. It just can't be over 50 people. So, and there's other rules.
No loud music. There's no loud music allowed, because they don't want people getting close to talk to each other. So technically Spy Bar could open on Friday as a bar, not a nightclub. So to the point though, like, yeah, Spy Bar's been open for 25 years. It hasn't always been like the underground haven that, has that real thick vibe, and it's dark. Yeah. There's no lights. John, you've been working with Spy Bar for what?
Man, since probably like 2015 years.
Damn.
And you've been in the nightlife industry, though, I mean, as early as it comes.
Twice that.
Yeah. I mean, John was the first guy to bring in every name to Chicago before Spy Bar even. Like, the story I always tell, so I got brought into the Spy Bar family after the first festival venture with Wavefront Music Festival.
Yeah.
I think I worked in exchange for VIP tickets the first year. And then they liked what I did, so they brought me into the Spy Bar fold. But one of the funniest moments was meeting Curley and learning from Curley his history in the industry, and him telling me, he's like, oh, like just casually, that he was the guy who broke the percolator, and that Cashmere had come in, aka Green Belt, had come in and said to the club he was DJing at and said, hey, you should play this. And
I did.
And John played it.
That's crazy.
And flash forward like 10 years later, I worked on the marketing team for BPM Festival when it was in Playa del Carmen.
Yeah.
John, it was the first time I had met Cash Green Velvet, and I asked him, I told him where I was from, Chicago. We had a laugh. And then I said, you know, John Curley. And I was expecting Curly's story to be totally bullshit, to be like one of those, like, one of those myths that, you know, you don't really, whatever. And I said, I was like, oh yeah, I work with John Curley. And Cash goes, John Curley. He's like, you know, he's the first person to ever have the percolator on vinyl. And I'm like, it's true.
Well, that was a different time back then. I mean,
I was gonna say, like, that back then, I want to know what it was. Let's kind of cut the future for right now, but I want to know what Chicago was like back then, because I like Chicago house is one of the reasons why I would say 70% of the house music industry is here. And I know we kind of, in Europe, we kind of took everything from America and kind of just cared it like our little baby, but it kind of came from Chicago, Detroit, and New York. And obviously we've all got friends from back then, Cash including that, and Dion and Gene. Was Gene around? Gene was around then, wasn't he? He
was like maybe what I would consider to be the second wave after that.
Yeah.
He was on, you know, Cash's label. I can't remember. I'd have to ask him when his first single was, but he goes pretty far back for sure.
So what was it like in Chicago back then? I guess we're talking. Are we talking late 80s, early 90s?
Curly could take you back even further. No, go back even further, John.
Well, no, for me it was started late 80s. So, but like I have to like paint a more full picture than that, because I was not around for the real inception of it, which really took place in the black and gay clubs like the Warehouse and where Ron Hardy used to play.
Yeah.
So it was really quite segregated. And when I came in, that was still the case. The underground was just the underground. There was no, I mean, this is well before the digital age. So really the only place you'd ever hear anything like this would be a nightclub. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time when he came in, because if he wanted to have his records played at that time, he'd have to go, you know, and give them to the DJs who are playing in those venues. And I was playing it was a teen venue called Medusa's, and it was amazing. It was Baroque music of all ilks, everything, like you play everything back then, at least at this club. And I think in a lot of them too, you know, you'd play everything from, you know, house to rock to disco to industrial. And it was just a really very different time back then.
Yeah.
And they don't even have teen clubs anymore. So
also, Will, can you imagine somebody coming up to you and being like, hey, you should play this in the middle of your set?
I know, right?
Oh yeah, I'm going to take that and put that on right now.
Yeah, I can't say that's how it happens nowadays, but I like the vibe. I was watching the other day, the Marshall Jefferson kind of short film that he did on kind of house music. and there was a lot that kind of spoke about Chicago, and it's obviously I'm way too young for that but it obviously I think it's something that we as producers and promoters and club owners and everybody, we always just look back and always are like, I wish it was like how it used to be. But I guess it's like, was it as good as they actually say it was?
I don't think you necessarily want to be around back then, because in some sense, like the guys that were doing it were pioneers in the sense that they didn't see the fruits of their efforts for years and years, if at all.
Yeah, so, yeah, of course.
You could just pop up, be an artist. Like, it was one thing that we did have going for us. And again, I stress that this was, I was playing their records, but the movement was really happening in an underground place. It was like almost 100% African-American made music from Chicago. And these guys were, really doing stuff in their own little bubble that was super creative, like the likes of a movement which happens, I'm sure, at different places at different times, like at punk or whatever, in certain marketplaces, especially since there was no, globalization back then. But one great thing about Chicago was that it had a radio station that used to play mix shows, and there was the Hot Mix 5, and they would play a lot of their own music and all the other guys. And so it would get broadcast on the FM dial in a way that was unprecedented. You'd never hear stuff like that on the FM radio if you look back to what was charting, in the mid to late 80s. So, I mean, to get back to your question, would you want to be back then? Maybe as a patron. It's kind of one of these things like, hey, I'd like to go back in time and see Miles Davis the first time he played, but would you want to be an artist back then?
No.
I don't know. I bet some of these guys who are making the music would tell you otherwise.
Yeah, because we all see it, but there was no real money in making music then, and then you kind of got to the point where, like, even like Cash, I'm pretty sure he like signed a major record label with Green Velvet or Cashmere, and I can pretty much guarantee that every record label just screwed everyone over to the extent where no one made any money anyway.
The number of like. It's so shitty and terrible, but like the number of DJs that, like, old school house head DJs that I've run into as Uber drivers, like, it's astonishing. Where like I'll talk to them, they'll be playing like an old house record, and I'm like, I've never heard. Oh, do we lose John?
We lost John.
I'll literally be like, I've never heard this before. Like, this is amazing. What is this? And they're like, oh, I made this in like 1982. And it's like, oh shit, like this would now like take off. This would be like a hot release.
Yeah, it's crazy because I think it was it? This is really bad. I always forget his name. Is it Chippy?
Yeah.
Chippy came to the Funky Brunch, and I'm just like, this dude is literally like one of the founders of everything, of house music, and is like kind of, it's sad. It's kind of like he's not really he's not part of anything really, or not. He's part of something. He's remembered, but it's like, did he really earn any money? If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look at like even Daje. Yeah. Like, that track, Kanye just like remade that track with like her lead vocals on it. But do you think 90% of the public knows who Daje is? Even though you might know her songs, you might know her tracks. I can almost guarantee to that point, she's not seeing the reward. And granted, it's a Cash track, but
that's what I love about Cash though, because he always brings Daje out.
Yeah, that's true.
Those, like, Cash keeps things very tight. Which is amazing. Here we go.
We did anytime Soul Clap comes out with us and wants to play in Chicago, they always request like the classic Chicago guys to back them up.
Yeah.
So John, who would we do at the last Soul Clap party, the outdoor one? We had Dajé, we had...
Oh, yeah. The E-Funk, House of E-Funk.
Yeah.
It was Derek Carter, Mark Farina, Dajé.
Damn.
I think Charlie couldn't make it that day. Simone, who's a local artist, she's great.
Underground.
Glen Underground, right. So that was a cool collection of, house originals. I mean, and those are guys that really I grew up with. I mean, Dajé, I used to play her music, and then all of it was produced by Curtis. I used to play it every single weekend, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that was bread and butter. And it's actually quite amazing how on top of the world that man is still to this day.
Yeah, Curtis is. If anybody doesn't know who we're talking about Green Velvet. He's just on another level, and it's been really nice. It's been really nice to see, actually, because I think in everyone's careers we have our ups and downs, right? And no matter what we're doing, and I think there was a point where, and I can't. This is just from me from an outside. I don't know if you know what I mean. I've not spoke to him about this directly, but there was a point in his career where there wasn't really anything going on, and just before we lost you, John, Joe and I were talking about how it's kind of like sad how the like creators of this genre that's so worldwidely kind of known is just kind of don't earn any money from it, if you know what I mean, and kind of still don't have a career or don't have like anything from that apart from just memories. And the thing with Curtis, he's built this insane following. And he's kind of, it's just going from strength to strength, and to the point where he's selling thousands of tickets every weekend. And it's so nice to see somebody just keep pushing on and keep pushing on.
Yeah. And
it's amazing.
I mean, it's definitely something from just a music as a whole stand up, like every genre of music, like has its roots in the Black community.
Yeah.
And the fact that so often it ends up not actually benefiting the creators of it, like rock and roll music, for example. Like, the roots of rock and roll are from the Black community, but
blues,
that divide is constantly there in music. And it's that's why I always appreciate, like I was saying earlier, the Soul Clap guys for wanting to bring in the originals and give them a platform and make sure that, people don't forget where the music started and how we got to where we are today and the communities and people involved.
Yeah, because I know Barkley, when Claude Von Stroke does the Dirty Bird parties in Chicago, he always kind of tries to bring the OGs. I think Derek Carter was at the one that I played at, which obviously we all know Derek is kind of a legend. Is he still doing his party? Is it Soundbar that he does his?
You're thinking of Smart Bar. Right now, no one's doing any parties.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yes, absolutely. He's still a resident there. I think he plays there. One thing I love about Derek is he's done something that I think it's super rare.
Yeah.
He's a traveling superstar by all rights, but he also has deep roots here. He plays here in Chicago a lot, and and people love seeing him, especially at that venue on that night. And he's got both worlds, which is great, because I don't know, like I don't, a lot of people will think that touring is nice and glamorous, and it sounds like fucking shit to me. Be in and out of planes and hotels, that would get old fast.
Yeah.
I also can't imagine, totally, we're all over the place, but I think that's fine. Will, the fact that you do it sober, I feel like, A, I don't understand, because I hate people when I'm sober and they're not. And B, I couldn't imagine traveling that much, though, being hungover. Like, I'm just not a person when I'm hungover. Obviously, as I talked about how I've missed your last two shows due to hangover. So, like, me and flights wouldn't get along.
I can happily say that I've never flown hungover, because I haven't drank for so many years, but I can't even imagine. Justin Martin, I know he used to party. He's sober now, but he used to party hard. And
Yeah.
I've had like many of conversations with him, and he's like, "Dude, I missed my flight. I've got to buy another flight." And it's like I couldn't even imagine just like having to wake up being that hungover and then be like, "Oh fuck, I missed my flight."
Yeah, and then have to deal with all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to the Derek Carter thing, though, I think I totally agree. He's kind of nailed something that most people don't, where in their hometown they can play and people don't get bored.
You know, it's funny because Derek Carter is the most asked for artist by other artists coming in town. I can't tell you how often I get asked by other artists to have Derek play with them. And most of the time I don't really entertain it because he'd be like, no thanks.
Well, but like he has a packed like weekly party.
Dude, he definitely doesn't need to be playing just anybody's party at this point. You know what I mean? But it just goes to show you that you know, the brand is strong worldwide, and there are others like him too. I get asked a lot of, you know, for Paul Johnson and so on and so forth. I mean, it's actually really encouraging to see some of these guys have been working at for so long, touring all the time and just doing really well. I mean, they're in demand, for sure. And, you know, it's funny, and some of the guys are in demand in such a way that they spend most of their time in Europe.
100%. Like, I can pretty much guarantee all of the original guys that created the genre have a huge kind of following in Europe. And I'm not too sure why that is, why America I think it's just the culture in America kind of just it got taken away with like hip hop and rock, and kind of with no major radio station kind of pushing it. After like the early 90s, it's just game over. And with Europe, like in England, we're super lucky with the BBC. We have Friday nights every weekend is all house dance, electronic music, with Annie Mac, Pete Tong. It's just constantly. And then you have obviously the Essential Mix, and then you go to Ibiza and you have Ibiza Global Radio, and you've got radio stations all over Europe playing house music all day long. And you just don't get that in America. So I guess that's radio is the kind of the start of the education of dance music if it's not in a club. And especially like from what you were saying, John, back in the day, you're only going to go to the club if you're in a very small minority or if you're in a very small niche. And that just, I still think that's where kind of America kind of falls down a little bit, where there's just seems to be a little bit more of a culture. However, in defense of America, I find a lot of the kids that go to the shows are kids. I don't really like using that word, but fuck it. They are a lot more open to different genres of music. Whereas I find in the UK and parts of Europe, it's a lot more cliquey. And it's like, well, I only like this and I only like that. Whereas in America, you'll go to a festival and you'll get somebody that goes listen to Seth Troxler and then go listen to Tiesto. And you're like, this just doesn't make sense in my head. And I'm sure you guys see it with shows that you put on, where you'll see just regulars just turn up because they like different music, really. Just don't think we get that so much in the UK.
So I think though with festivals, and John, correct me if you disagree, but it has shifted to more of like this headliner culture, where like you might not necessarily turn up, like when people would go clubbing, like they didn't care who was going to play. It could be all locals. They were there just for the music, whatever. I mean, John, DJ booths, when were those? I mean, where was the DJ booth location at some of those original venues?
Well,
like it was physically at the back of the club.
Yeah, I mean it's totally true, and that comes with upsides and downsides. I mean, I used to play at this nightclub called Shelter, and it was perched up way high, and you had to like climb a ladder to get up there, and there was this big dance floor, and it was very much a part of the the venue was the music, but the DJ wasn't supposed to be right there and seen by everybody per se. And now it would like this is before the days of just holding up your cell phone and filming whoever's performing.
Yeah,
it was more like a dance vibe back then. And not to say that it's not the case here. You can find it for sure, but there's no question that the headliner festival culture is also permeated into the venues as well.
Yeah.
Which is why one of the reasons why I find it really challenging and fun when you create an event to try and do it with more elements than just a headline name. Although so you really take like a holistic view to producing events where yes, you do have people on a bill that have their own draws, but you're also considering like what the place looks like and how it feels and how it's set up, anything from the decor to like the location and so on and so forth. But it's not the same in that respect at all. There's no question about it. I remember once going into, this is a long time ago, into Shure, their corporate headquarters here, the people who make the microphones. Yeah. And we were pitching to get some of our event sponsored. And they're like, DJs, they're like, in their minds, they were just like the guy you hire for a wedding, Yeah. We had to explain it to them like this, like they're real-time orchestrators and blah, 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 So it's definitely changed quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think this kind of brings it back a little bit to now. And I've spoken to a few promoters and a few mates that throw shows and a few other DJs. And I think with this, with COVID and all this bullshit, I think this actually could be, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think this could be the start of potentially like local shows kind of coming back and people just go into a night, if you know what I mean, and clubs being like, okay, so this night this is our own night. We're going to curate it with DJs. We're not going to put headliners on. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that'll be short-lived, or do you think that'll be something that will kind of grow and kind of turn into something? Because we all know that everyone wants to see the headliners, but it's down to the clubs and the promoters to build something. But of course, everyone needs to make money. So it's that catch-22. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that it'll be short-lived in the long run, because the one thing that's changed and it's irreversible is just globalization. Yeah. So what you're listening to and where you're getting it is from everywhere. It's not just from the city that you're in. Mm-hmm. However, there will always be a place for what I like to call industry nights. I mean, that word gets used very loosely, but I would call Queen one. It's got a format and it's got its residents, and they play. It's seldom do they ever like showcase anybody outside of their own residence. Yeah. And I think any healthy market probably has at least, one, two, or a few of those, a handful of them. And it's always been like that in Chicago. In Chicago, there's always been, I remember like the Boom Boom Room was a famous one, like, and with their own residents, and it was, and going further back to Shelter, and then you get far enough back, it was just that. But it was only in the underground clubs would you hear underground music, all the other clubs were just bars and live venues. I mean, I think the year was 1995 when, actually, no, I mean, the first time I remember DJ being imported to Chicago, it wasn't by me, but it was at Shelter. It was a DJ Kyoki, mm-hmm. who was this superstar from New York, came from a collective called Disco 2000. Yeah. And I was like, who is this guy? I just walked him in the booth, and he stopped the music and he just started, it was like the rave days, and it was, and that had to be 1990. 2 or 3. I mean, that was a long time. I think that Digweed came and played back then as well.
Damn.
He was one of the first guys to ever come to Chicago from
Like
Europe. I
internationally.
think. Maybe the first.
That's crazy. Yeah, because
But
go on, carry on.
as time goes on, you know, and especially with the advent of the digital age, it becomes more commonplace until where we are today. And I think that will snap back. I don't think that, you know, like there will be a lasting, you know, all the clubs that used to do that are now all of a sudden going to be just locals. I doubt that. But for a while anyway.
Because I've got this thing, goes back to what we said at the beginning of the conversation. I got this thing where I would just I'd love it to be just about the culture to a certain extent. But then you're 100% right, because it's not about, the culture is changed, if you know what I mean. And the culture is about putting your phone up and recording stuff and showing all your friends and seeing how many likes you can get on Instagram. And don't get me wrong, there's an amazing culture that goes along with that, with people that love listening to the music. But it's interesting because I've got friends that live in Chicago and they're kind of my age now, and they're at the point where they're kind of like not going to clubs, but they're like starting their own little parties that are just like vinyl only parties and just doing like really cool little things like that. And I think that could move into something a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. I feel like we've seen that from at least like going from Spy Bar like that. Well, two different things. Number one, creating the vibe is outside of obviously just like who's playing your venue. Well, that's a big part of it, and what the culture is that you're building. Like that starts with like your marketing, how you treat your event attendees, what's the experience when you're at the event, like making it something that's more holistic. And that's where you see a lot of promoters actually kind of fail with it, is they have a space, they book the headliner, they think they have a party, and then, you know, that's the gist of the experience. So we've, you know, outside of Spy Bar, we've seen that it does need to be something that's a little bit different because people aren't going out to the clubs. And that's where things like the Funky Brunch came up, where it's, okay, what can we do on a Sunday afternoon that's a little bit different but fun? Let's throw a party in a beercade where there's 90s video games and a wall made out of cassettes. And like, I hear you played a very funky set. But, you know, where it puts people in a different environment and it gives them something that's a little bit more special. So whether that scales up for the more, you know, headlining type artists, or if that means you're doing that just for your group of friends, that's definitely where it's going.
I'm definitely seeing an uptick on just groups of people doing their own thing and theming it and stuff in a way I don't actually remember so much before. And then out of that movement, I'm seeing a lot of, just over the last like 5 years or so, small promoters that will come and inhabit like small spaces, and they have kind of a flavor to them, and it's really interesting to see. So that I think is very encouraging. And I like to think that there's a place for, you know, everything. You know, there is definitely a place. I think there will always be a place for the Spy Bars of the world. You know, and at this point, you know, the range of venues that I work with anyway, it starts on the, you know, like smaller end, like a Spy Bar, but it moves up to, you know, all the way up to the much bigger venues, like a new one called Radius, which it's funny because that was the night before your event was Carl Cox there. Then all of a sudden, boom! But that's like a venue that can do 4,000 people in the main room, and in the middle, plus then there's the festivals, right? And then in the middle, there's all these kind of experiential type of events that where it takes place and how it's produced. There's a really wide range, so I think that's encouraging. It's not just a one trick pony at this point anymore.
Yeah, totally. How much do the festivals fuck the clubs, or do they not? I don't know, because
Oh.
I always see it from a DJ side. If I don't ever see it from your side of things, and I've always wondered like how, like, it must be like if I owned a club and a festival comes in to the city, and I know you guys run festivals yourselves as well, or have work in curating them. So it's like, does it take away from the clubs, or do you think it adds things to the clubs? Or, I don't know.
I mean, it definitely, there's a swell of activity surrounding every festival that's beneficial to the entire city.
Totally.
I mean, they do, yeah, they do, economic impact studies that are pretty broad,
Yeah.
that would tell you that that's the case. Now, just, having run many different clubs, I can tell you that is the case. Even if we're not participating in a festival, like there's a surge in people when Lollapalooza is in Chicago that's undeniable. We look forward to these weekends. They're an integral part of the money that we make. So is there some politics? There's always going to be some politics in terms of who goes where and whatnot, but I think it is a very big net positive, and the fact that a place like Chicago can sustain as many festivals as it does is a really good thing. I mean, even a festival like Riot Fest with just rock and roll, it certainly doesn't take anything away from us. If anything, it's a really amazing thing to have these in the city.
Because for me, obviously living in Detroit, I've been there 3 years now and been going there for 6 years, and seeing how much, I'm sure you guys have seen it if you've been, but how much Movement Festival changes the city over a weekend, to the point where it literally, venues open for like that are never open, that may open maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year, and you go to Detroit on Movement Weekend and every venue is open and every venue is packed. And you also get some really interesting lineups, and you get some really interesting after parties and things like that. And I think it brings a lot to the cities. 100%.
I mean, I think Movement, I would go a step beyond. I mean, Movement is really like a part of that city's soul.
Yeah.
For one thing, it developed from something that was produced by the city and kind of went off from there, but it's definitely still very true to Detroit and the whole techno aesthetic. And as far as having, an impact on, the surrounding area, I would definitely say that it goes beyond its borders.
100%.
And proof positive is that we're there every year doing after parties along with, along with the Paxaw guys. And so we benefit from it as well. So it's, there's no question about it. I mean, I think that any strong music city has a strong festival circuit.
Yeah.
I would say worldwide. There are challenges in Chicago to pulling stuff like this off, and a lot of it has to do with the laws that exist in terms of licensing and just getting things done.
Yeah.
It's different from city to city and market to market and region to region, country to country.
Totally.
I mean, it's not like Berlin where, you're raving in a warehouse for like 3 days straight, or Miami for that matter, but nonetheless, the people are here and there. I mean, they come in also from all over the country for certain, events, and just for the city at large.
Well, I think go on, Joe.
I was just gonna say, was Movement the first time when was the first time you were in Detroit? Was that for Movement or
no, it wasn't. It was actually for Grasshopper. I played Grasshopper years ago. And it was actually like one of the first clubs I kind of fell in love with in America. And then I just kept on going. I kept on like doing after, but I've still never played Movement. But I play pretty much all the after parties. There's always an after party every year that I play, which is amazing. But for me, that festival is talked about worldwide. It's the one festival in America that with no disrespect to the other festivals, but I think it's really kept true to techno and house and techno and the origins of Detroit and kind of what they've done there. I think it's absolutely beautiful, to be fair. And the vibe is always amazing in the
100%.
city. It's from living there, when you walk around the city, it's still very up and coming city. It's still a long way for the city to be anything like Chicago or anything like that. But then when movement's happening, it feels like you're in a city that's like fully developed and going on. But yeah, you still have parties going on all the time and things like that. I just hope it doesn't lose that kind of that vibe. But I don't think it will, because the city was just built on, a lot of the city is built on around that festival.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
No, definitely
not.
not.
It was interesting. So I went to the movement like 4 years in a row. And then for my 9-to-5 job, I actually was traveling to Detroit every like Sunday through Wednesday, like during the work week, just throughout the year for about 4 months, and seeing exactly that, like to your point, where like it's when movement's happening in that city, it's like a holy shit moment.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's such a nice feeling. And it's such a shame that it didn't happen this year, like a lot of festivals and all the club parties and stuff. It's such a shame, more so for the city, and for the Paxhow guys. I think it brings so much to the city, which is amazing. In Chicago, obviously, it's a pretty developed city. Well, parts of the city is pretty well developed. Does that get in your way for like licensing and things like that? Does that really stop it? Because I don't know when do you have to stop serving?
Well, so there's different classes of licenses.
Yeah.
And to do what you'd want to do to be, say, a club like Spy Bar, you need a license that allows you to go to 4. It gives you an extra hour on Saturdays. Plus you have a PPA, which is a public place of amusement. So you can have like live music, and DJs fall under that general rubric. And you'd also, I think, you need a tavern license. You need a bunch of stuff that it's really actually very hard to get nowadays.
Yeah.
And prevailing attitude to your point is not in my backyard. No, no alderman, so you get grandfathered in. You'll notice this type of thing happens, for instance, in New York as well. That's one of the cool things about Detroit, but because there's so many uninhabited areas still. And in Manhattan, it's just not a very club friendly borough. But if you go out to Brooklyn, it's like totally different rules. It's not like that in Chicago. The rules apply, across the board within the city borders. So short of going out to a suburb, you're basically at the mercy, of these kinds of licensing, permitting, rules and regulations in order to do special stuff. But it's definitely doable, but it's not as easy.
Because I guess what we've found, I'm pretty sure you guys will agree, but what happens generally is this happened in New York massively, and it's actually happening in Bristol in the UK, where a club will open up in a rundown area. The club will then get super popular. Then you'll find restaurants popping up over the place, and then you'll find hotels popping up, and then you'll start finding real estate people living there, and then you'll find that the clubs will get closed down because of noise complaints, and then it's kind of moved on to the next area. And I find at the moment, I think it was a couple of months ago, Motion in Bristol, they've been there for years. It used to be a skate park, and they're still there, but somebody's been putting huge amount of planning permission for like houses to be built like very close to it, and you're just like, it's such a shame, because who's going to win to a certain extent. But it's also such a shame for everybody, because everyone loses out. Does that happen much in Chicago?
And it's kind of the story of my club life. I mean, you could break it down into epics, and every big nightclub went through a phase and then it kind of closed. Now, it's interesting that I think that's part of a bigger story that's gentrification in general.
Totally.
So if you take a look at a place like Spy Bar, when it's in River North, and I know I know restaurant owners in River North who were there like for generations, and it was just desolation in River North. If you track back like 30 years.
Yeah.
When Spy Bar, or before, and when Spy Bar came in, there wasn't a lot going on. And since then, the march of, time and brings, if you get one and then maybe another, places like it, then other stuff starts to come in surrounding it. And it's just a matter of time. Now, that said, you can't just tell someone to leave. You'd have to rezone it, and it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're definitely not going to see any other places like it open up in that same neighborhood. Plus, you have to deal with all the political forces and the neighbors and all that stuff. And yes, if you want to do anything like it, you're going to have to move away from these types of places. And I've just seen this happen time and time again.
It happened with the Mid.
Yeah.
Think about what happened in the Mid too. The Mid, all of a sudden the West Loop really took off. What is that? Fulton Market District really took off. And all of a sudden it's like, well, condos would work nice here. And then the Mid closed a year after that. So
I guess also let's be real here. A lot, I could be completely wrong, but a lot of the people that run the clubs, do they necessarily own the buildings? Or
it's a good point.
Because
so not everybody, but you do, then you're on your own landlord. So that always helps.
But then also, if you have that money making opportunity where you're in a place where you could sell your building for $3 million for condos, shit. Of course, you can take them up on that if you're not in for the culture.
And I think that's the thing as well. And it's I don't blame anyone for bettering their life, especially in America. America's an expensive place to live. And especially if you're in the city. So I totally get that. But I think that then just goes back to kind of our current day and how it is at this moment in time. It's how much it actually costs to open the doors of a club. It's expensive as shit. I know that just through talking to you guys and talking to other club owners and things like that. And it's how are you guys surviving during this time as a club and as a promotion company and all of that? What's kind of, or is it literally just skin of the teeth and just hoping that things kind of come back to good?
Well, it's a good question. For one thing, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody.
No, of course.
But there are certain things that are universal about this situation, which is, for instance, the rules of capacity and all that kind of stuff. Well, I think we're in new territory, so I don't think anybody really knows how it's going to work out. And you couldn't have asked a single person, be like, "Hey, you're going to be down to nobody and then 50 people, and they can't touch each other," or whatever. I mean, no one would have believed a single word of it. So we're kind of just feeling our way through it. There's no question that a lot of businesses are not going to necessarily make it through.
There was a study about independent. They claim a group of independent music venues and promoters came out with a study that said up to 90% of the independent music venues could close by year end because of the impact from coronavirus. Because the biggest thing that surprised me, and I don't necessarily know how this is impacting now, but insurance for a venue, if some drunk asshole falls and hurts themselves, that's an insurance claim.
Yeah.
So it's beyond, you're still paying your premiums. You're still keeping the lights on. You have rent if you don't own the venue. And for a lot of venues now, it's just hoping for donations and hoping and doing live streams that, is a way to keep people engaged and keep your brand at the top of it. But at the end of the day, it's not a source of income.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I think that the only way out of this, I don't think that there's a silver bullet that makes a club successful at a quarter of its capacity. You know what I'm saying? So the bottom line is you just kind of have to tough it out, and everybody's going to emerge in debt, with the exception maybe of the very deep pocketed operations, say like the Live Nations and what have you.
I don't know, dude. I don't know. The Live Nation, I don't know the full details, but Live Nation was going to go unless they got bought. I think 500 million got invested into them by a Saudi company.
I saw that.
So,
and contracts.
Yeah, their stock went down from, I think, from like $60 to like 25 overnight.
That's crazy.
Lost billions.
That's crazy.
Billions.
Yeah. You know, I didn't mean to single out Live Nation at all. I was just kind of making a point that
definitely.
You'd have to just have a huge cash reserve to not come out of this in some sort of debt, and that you just have to dig your way out of, and hope that you can get to that, even part. And that's true, like for everybody, right? Isn't everybody's? This is one thing about the current conditions, is that it affects everybody. Obviously, some people like Joe, who's an IT guy, the marketing guy, can keep his job. Like who I'm sure places like Zoom and Twitch, their stock just shot up. It was great for them, but for the rest of them, for most part. So it's really just kind of toughing it out. And it's right. We're right now in the place of this whole scenario where we're just starting to open up, and we don't know. It's particularly hard, however, for nightclubs like any of the places that I work, in the sense that if you're not supposed to dance, and you're not supposed to have loud amplified music, they break it down into phases. Well, you're in the very last phase, like where everything's fine and there's vaccines. So, it may seem bleak. I mean, I believe I've been through, a lot over time, but it's going to take a while, I have a feeling, before everything is back to normal.
Well, I think that's the reason why I asked you, because I totally agree that everyone's in this together, right? Like, there's nobody that's not been affected by this, and there's something kind of community about that, right? That is kind of beautiful to a certain extent. That it's not just one person suffering; it's kind of everybody in their own little way. And thoughts go out to the people that have like lost family members and things like that. That's absolutely awful. But also, let's be honest, clubs are going to be the last thing to be back to good, and
concerts and festivals.
Exactly. And I think people forget necessarily how this isn't about the people with the big pockets and the people running the festivals and like the big promoters and things like that. This is about to the cleaners of the festival, to the security of the festival, to the people that are working the bar, to the people that are working in the artist area, to the artists, to everyone. It's a huge society that's just been kind of told you got to wait.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because even when we come back, those are the people who are at the most risk.
Yeah.
Those are usually, for the most part, like it's like that catch-22 of rushing to come back because the staff wants to work,
of course,
the full team wants to work, but also you're the most at risk. Usually, you don't have health benefits in this industry, or very little.
Yeah.
Like it's weighing the risk of making a livelihood versus having a life.
Yeah. Well, I think for me as well, it's like I was talking to Ryan, my manager, and we were talking about kind of more so the liabilities. Like, I'm pretty sure if I get coronavirus, I'll be pretty good, if you know what I mean. And probably majority of the people that are coming to the show will be pretty good, because it's just been proven that the age gaps. But I don't want anyone to come to my show that then catches something at the show. Obviously, you can't prove that, but I don't want to be part of that. And then go and take it to their gran, and their gran dies. And I think that's the thing that I'm struggling with right now, is that obviously, like, you see some shows happen in certain places like Florida and
Arizona.
fucking Florida. And you're just like, I'm not too sure if this is responsible, but I also have the other side of it where it's like, I get it. People need to earn money, and people need a living, and they need a purpose in life. But there's like, it's that happy medium, which I don't know. No one knows, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's like with like 50% capacities, or like even 70. Like, what's your profit margins? What are you working at? Is it like 15%? Is it 20%? Like, because I know restaurants usually run at like 4 or 5%, and they have to be slammed to be making money. And it's like, I just couldn't even imagine what it's like in a club, because I just don't think there is that. I'd say the profit margins are about the same as a restaurant.
Yeah, at this point, the hope is to get back together, but do it in a safe enough way.
Yeah.
But if we can even just break even on something, then some of our staff
Totally.
Is actually getting some work, and that, and it's also, helps you stay relevant.
Yeah.
We've been, like, there's been a lot of live streaming going on and everything like that, but that's a conversation we're all having right now, within and among all of the different venues and groups of people that I work with, is how can you do this? At what point is it actually, does it make sense? Because you don't want to be a danger to the public.
Yeah.
But we were tasked with putting some measures into place that would make it a safe environment. Nothing's fail safe, but it's very interesting because I'll tell you just this one little factoid, that there was discussion about what is going on with outdoor stuff in Chicago, and say that at large, right?
Yeah.
In the macro sense. And if you had asked a month ago, you'd have just been met with, especially on the city side of things, we want no part of this whatsoever. But now what they have is they have some metrics that, it's just so bizarre, but they have metrics that stem from having witnessed protests that gathered in a park to the tune of like 20,000 people, 75% of whom at least were masked, and they saw zero uptick, so, and the state, and Illinois happens to be one of the best, if not, it's definitely one of the best states in terms of keeping this trend going downwards. Yeah. So that's really interesting to hear. So now you're, saying to yourself, if you put certain things in play, the distancing and the masking and all that kind of stuff, and all that stuff, if you really try and protect the public and your staff and all that stuff, can it be done where you don't shoot things back up? I mean, it's far from unknown, but we didn't have, before the protests started, I mean, everybody was saying it's just going to spin out of control, and it didn't. But that might have a lot to do with the fact that the people who were protesting were actually following social distancing. I mean, it's crazy, that you'd even have this metric.
Well, like, I don't know. It's such a strange time. You couldn't have written this, right? You couldn't have written this at all. And 2020 is going to be the year that's. I actually think there's going to be a lot of positive that comes from this. in the grand scheme of things. Let's talk about the protests, and let's talk about the whole kind of movement in Chicago right now, and how is it at this moment in time from that? Because I'm only seeing from the media, and if I'm totally honest, I don't love the media in this whole kind of pandemic time. I think I think there's some parts of the media that are great, but I also think majority of it is just not, and pretty unhealthy. So what is it like on the ground there?
So honestly, I was following along on my phone one of the first day of the protests, and not even after, it was after the protests, and I was following around on my phone, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, like, I don't want to go outside. Like, it looks like a fucking war zone outside. Like, this is crazy. And then I literally like got up and went to go get my mail outside, and it's just like peaceful, calm, serene.
Yeah.
Like the media definitely hypes it up to a certain degree. That's not to say that it wasn't, a crazy time, but it made it seem like, don't go outside, guard your windows. This is going to happen. Like, there's different things taking off on social media that are just not true or hyped up to a degree that is extreme. And that also, like, understanding that different neighborhoods, different people, different groups, but from like an organizational standpoint, I mean, it's been amazing to watch how people are coming together to actually fight social injustice. I mean, one of the people that we work with actually just organized the parade protest. When was that? Last weekend, John? 2 weekends ago? That did like 2 weeks ago, did about 35,000 people marching through the streets. So he's really shifted his attention. They're doing a Black Trans Lives Matter march on Sunday. And with everything that's going on in the world from a COVID perspective, being able to shift his focus to really knowing how to promote and organize into something for social justice and something to really rally, taking his expertise and throwing events and organizing people and doing it for now, the most worthy cause has been super impressive.
It really is quite remarkable, and I mean, I'm going to throw his name out there, Don Brown. He's, a friend. He works right next to me, like every week. And he had already created this group called Activate Shy. So it was already around, and it was primed to, take on an issue like this when this came around. But the success story about it was that huge numbers, like up to 30,000 people, not a single arrest, didn't, it's not like a whole bunch of people got sick and everything like that. And I think the thing to remember about stuff like this is it is never, and I mean absolutely never, that simple. And when you take the 24-hour news cycle, it thrives on, feeding, throwing out news bites that are meant for consumption on a very, like a very not complicated, manner, I mean, trying to, you understand what I'm saying? So, and these are very complex issues.
Yeah. Cause
even on like, oh, go ahead.
Because I think that's the thing, like, obviously coming from the UK, where the UK has its issues 100%, and I'm not a pro, if you know what I mean, at any of these issues. I've like been brought up in an insanely nice area. I live in the middle of the countryside. I literally, no one lives next to me. I can walk in the hills and I have no issues. To then move into Detroit, to a very different neighborhood, where you hear gunshots left, right, and center. And I know like South Side Chicago is pretty much exactly the same, to the point where it's worlds apart from the downtown kind of part and a lot of the suburbs and things like that. I know we're not pros. None of us are, and I know none of us are claiming it. But how do you fix that?
It's funny because it's not, I don't know if funny is the right word, but I'm related to someone. I have a cousin who is she directs an organization called the Crime Lab, and it's a part of the University of Chicago that basically smashes numbers to come on studies that basically are all about social injustice and gun violence and all this kind of stuff. And she's been working on this for like decades. And she said, you really have to approach it from all angles.
Totally.
It's not a gun thing. It's not, it's social inequity. It's like all this stuff. And if you don't really approach it, and it's funny because she's, because she used to work for the Joyce Foundation, and which was funded the anti-gun lobby and all that kind of stuff. But now she's like, you know what? I bought a gun. And she wanted to learn. She knows, like every single police commander in general. She talks to them all. There's this crazy schism right now, and media feeds a lot of it between, the Black Lives Matter and then police, and then police brutality, and then being pro-police and anti-police and all that kind of stuff. And she'll tell you, like, listen, that, it's really tough what's going on, because the average cop who's out there is a good cop is just, the environment that they're walking into. And then you have, like this insane brutality that you keep seeing play over and over again. And she'll tell you anyway that you need all hands on deck. Totally. You need the city, you need, like private, companies funding stuff. You need the individual level, and all that kind of stuff. It's really daunting because it's, what are you supposed to do? It's really bad in Chicago right now too. And it's so sad because, just this last weekend, I mean, it was like 100 shooting. I mean, it's just out of control,
Yeah, because I think that's sorry, Joe. Go for it, Joe.
No, go for it.
I think that's the thing for me is like, I wish I could have a magic wand and just fix it. I think 95% of the population think that as well. And I think you're always going to get people that don't want that and think that how we live today is fine. And there's always change that needs to be made. But the thing that amazes me the most in America, and obviously I'm not American, so I'm not the best at talking about this, and I'm not the best at talking about it in the UK. I know nothing really at the end of the day. But I think it's crazy that 20-30 minutes down the road, people are living in obscene poverty, and then 20 minutes up the road, you've got people in multi-million-pound mansions. That just doesn't make sense to me. And for me, the only way I can see that to be fixed is education.
Yeah.
But education, like fair education, because I know in the UK we don't have it perfect at all, but our education system is pretty good. And we, don't get me wrong, we have poor areas and we have poor neighborhoods, and the education could probably 100% be better in all neighborhoods, 100%. But I just think that's the one thing that I noticed going to Detroit is that like schools were getting shut down and kids can't even go to school, or like teachers are having to pay for like things to teach the kids, and you're just like, you're in America, like,
yeah.
Just the amount of money they make on taxes. Come on. It just doesn't make sense. And then you kind of learn about the whole situation, like how certain areas are getting more money because of property taxes and things like that. And you're just like, this is something that's so easily fixed, but just doesn't get fixed. And I don't get it.
I was going to say that the biggest thing in Chicago is what they call like redlining, which is exactly what you were talking about, where, the people in power have organized the neighborhoods so that certain property taxes go to certain schools, and they usually like offset it. So the poor communities, like they don't have that property tax to invest within the school.
Yeah.
So to your point of like education being, and the way that Chicago is mapped, like it is probably one of the most segregated cities in the US, to where in the areas in which the crazy amount of property tax is funding the education system, the communities that don't have that then are closing schools, and now it's just from the bottom up, just a totally fucked system.
Yeah.
Like there's no way to lift yourself up from the bootstraps and like pull yourself up to make something out of yourself when like you don't even have a chance from the start. Like you're never on that equal playing field.
Well, I think that's the thing for me as well, is that moving to Detroit, and I didn't ever really I knew that it happened in the world, but moving to Detroit, and I was like, this is super sad. There's the kids that don't even leave the block, if you know what I mean, that they grow up on, and like it's how it just doesn't make sense. It's something that I'm just like, I don't know how to fix it. I'd love to fix it, but it's like it also comes to a point where I think you mentioned it, John, is like it's a factors of so many things, and it's a factors of what can we do as people in our communities. And I think that's kind of where it has to start, in the communities, because it's definitely not coming from the top. And I don't think it will come from the top for a very long time, especially if Trump carries on getting in, and even if Biden gets in. Let's be honest, like as much as nobody wants Trump to stay in, or majority of people don't want Trump to stay in our community, let's be honest, I don't think Biden's probably the best person as well in the grand scheme of things. But it's just that for a country that has so much power in the world and is very easily has a lot of influence on the world, yet it still has very old systems to help people, and I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
Especially over the past couple months, there's a shift from, at least personally, where it's like not being racist was enough. Okay, I personally, like not racist, and thinking that was enough.
Yeah.
But you have to shift now to being almost anti-racist, where it's from a personal, individual level. What are you doing to help bring equality to those that don't have it? Like either, to your point, whether it's in your own personal community, whether it's literally just, if people can't give money, but it's getting involved, getting active, and not just being not racist, but being anti-racist to the point where you're helping lift up the other people who don't have that equal chance.
Yeah.
I think that's been like a shift in my own personal thinking over the past, month or however long since this has really came to the forefront.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you said, it's community organization. I mean, that's the only thing, on our level that you can do at this point. Like I said, it's so big and daunting and complex. Some of these issues that it's easy just to be like, yeah, fuck it. But it's funny because I work with a guy, Anthony Mosley, who has his own theater group, and it's like a nonprofit organization that produces theater around social justice issues and whatnot. And we work together on a bunch of pilot projects to raise awareness and stuff. And in the grand scheme of things, these efforts are really, they're like not even a drop on the ocean.
Yeah.
But I don't think that means that you shouldn't like try and do something. I mean, it's, you know what I mean?
Effect. It's the drop in the ocean, but what is that ripple going to lead to?
Right.
For every individual, if you feel like you're not doing enough, or if you're not doing anything, what is that drop in the bucket that's going to create that ripple effect that will, change those around you?
And I'll tell you this, from an artist perspective, I have to give kudos to Lee Foss, who signed on to the project from the very beginning, because he was, he felt that there was something he could contribute, and he did. We produced 3 of these events, and we'll get back to it as soon as we can all get together again.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see artists that feel strongly about something actually do it as well. So
yeah.
So, Mr. Clarke, we'll drag you into one of these.
I'm down to help. It's been a strange time for me, like social media wise as well, though, because
I bet.
it's like I see so many people just shouting and telling you what you should be doing and what you should be saying, and I'm not really that type of person, where like I don't want to tell people that they should be doing this and they should be doing that. I don't think it's healthy. And I think without going, you kind of got to be careful what I say, but it's like cancel culture has got real, and it's got even realer now, where I've seen people trying to do the right thing and trying to say the right thing and trying to give the right message, yet their wording was a couple of words out and they've just been destroyed online. And I think it's really dangerous, because I think we're all trying to get we're all trying to get there, if you know what I mean. And I think some people get there a bit slower than others, and I think some people do it differently, and we all kind of want to talk differently, we all want to action differently. And I think it's kind of one of the reasons why I haven't been super vocal. I've said what I needed to say and kind of just stayed back on the peripheries and kind of watched and just to see what everyone else is saying. It's something that needs to be talked about, especially in our industry. Is massively, I think black culture is the reason why we are here, right? It's from the conversation earlier, it's the reason why we're here. I want to do that respectfully as well, and I want people to do it nicely, and to, rather than call people out online and kind of put them to Judge Judy on Twitter or Instagram, is like call them up and have a conversation like this, if you know what I mean. Like, we probably might not all agree on something, but because we're having a long form conversation, that this is the situation that you can talk it out and you can kind of come to it. But I also think it's weird because we're all allowed our own opinion, but if your opinion, how it feels to me, and I could be wrong, but if your opinion isn't what somebody else thinks, then you're wrong.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit, it's taking that thought though and twisting it too, where if you have an opinion and you're not willing to learn and then admit that, you know, oh, after speaking with you, my opinion has changed. Because a lot of people like get super defensive when you challenge somebody's opinion.
Totally.
And it's like, it's if you're broadcasting an opinion that's not being willed to change based on what you've learned, then you're pushing your opinion as a fact. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like double edge.
I would also suggest this about what you're originally saying. And then I'm going to throw it back to you, Joe, but because the challenge of social media is really that you're, you know, for the most part, you're vocalizing in sound bites. If you take something that complex and try and simplify it into a post and then put it out there in a world where it just gets amplified so quickly and goes viral so fast, I've seen things just get really nasty, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I like to actually hear, Joe, what you think about the right way to express yourself on social media, because that's a minefield if you're not careful, you know?
Yeah. So in my 9 to 5, I work with like corporate brands doing like social media and marketing. And the two things, and I think it relates really to everybody, but at a certain point, just shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like, I don't know if you've seen Dave Chappelle's new special on Netflix. And he talks about, oh, it's so good. He talks about like, as all this was going on, he was watching CNN and the guy in CNN was asking like, why aren't these celebrities speaking out?
Yeah.
And it's like, at the end of the day, like the streets are speaking loud enough on their own.
Yeah.
You know, they don't need me out there championing a cause that has 35,000 people strong.
Yeah.
You know, so that is the one thing is, and especially too, like if you don't like you're not required to speak on something, it's the struggle though between giving your audience the voice to let them know, hey, you guys should also be thinking about this, at least maybe not necessarily, you know, having the same opinion as I, but
see, this is the thing for me, and it's kind of controversial, and I'm sure you've probably both seen it, and it's people saying if you're silent, you're part of the cause.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that if you're completely silent. But just because you haven't posted something on social media, and to be fair, I have. I'm just talking for other people, and my feelings on it. If you haven't posted something on your social media, doesn't mean you're silent. Just because everybody can't see it doesn't mean you're not having the conversations with your family at the dinner table. You're not having the conversations with your mates. I've had plenty of talks with my friends that have zero idea what the hell's going on, if you know what I mean. And you can't blame that. You can't blame anyone. I'm not the first person to say I know everything, but I just don't. I totally agree with the thing is, that sometimes you just do have to shut the fuck up
and listen.
Yeah.
You know, here's the thing for me, because I didn't grow up with the cell phone in my hand, you know.
Papa Curley coming back out.
No, I listen, there's upsides and downsides to that. But since I'm not super comfortable, I don't speak like everything that's on my mind I don't think it never occurred to me to just go right to any kind of social media platform with it. That I believe that really it's your actions that speak louder than your words at some point or another. And you can be vocal by doing things. So that's not being silenced at all, you know, and then, you know, and long before, you know, all this came up, I mean, this has been an issue for a while. The violence and, you know, and all this stuff this wasn't born with George Floyd.
No,
it goes. I mean, I was around during, you know, the Rodney King stuff, and
LA too.
So the bottom line is like, what can you do? You know, like it just you know, I don't necessarily think that, at least for me, and it's personal for everybody, that going to your news feed and throwing shit out there is always, maybe you have other ways to express those same things, you know?
Yeah, I think what it is for me on that is just, you've hit the nail on the head really, but it's just about actually respecting other people, that just because they're saying something you don't agree with, it doesn't mean they're wrong, and it doesn't mean you're right. But I also think social media just doesn't allow you to have that conversation. It doesn't allow you. You're just putting statements out there.
Right. Wow.
Fuck knows what's going on, people. Fuck knows. I think Dwayne Johnson should be the president. That's what I think.
I think John Curley for president. I'm in for that one.
No way, not in a million years.
You know, they'd have so much dirt. It'd be so funny just to see that nomination and then all the photos coming up.
Yeah, imagine the memes.
Yeah.
Imagine the memes from like Funky Bunches.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys don't know what you're doing with regards to parties, but do you have any like plans for the future, or are you still just taking it day by day and just hoping for the best?
I wouldn't say that we don't know anything about doing parties. I think that I don't know if this is a prevailing attitude. I mean, a lot of businesses are thriving in this, but those would be the business with big outdoor patios and stuff.
Yeah.
This is like specifically like ours. And I'm, listen, you're in the same you're in the same boat to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I haven't stopped planning and doing things. I just plan stuff. You plan for the best, but you brace for the worst. So the worst case scenario, okay, so all the stuff I have planned in the fall gets pushed into the spring. I mean, obviously that can't go on forever, but we're just kind of like trucking along, hoping for the best, and I have a calendar. It's full of events, not much in the immediate future. In the midterm, like it starts to pick back up in 2021, like
packed.
Let's hope, because I didn't realize that you were back in the UK. I was talking to the guys, since things are just starting to open up. I'm like, yeah, we can get Will to come down here, no problem. Because we're in Detroit. I'm like, fuck, oh man, he's gonna have to be. We're gonna have to wait, but it's, and one of the strategies, at least for the time being, is to like book domestically. There's a lot of great talent right here in the city. There's there's talent in the region, the Midwest, and it's not that far away if you just hop on an airplane from LA. It's really the overseas stuff. It's you guys that's going to take the longest, because not only just the distance, it's also all these countries and like the EU and everything are kind of on their own time clock in terms of what they're doing and when you can do stuff. And so I think that it's not going to go from 0 to 60. It's going to open up in phases. It's going to be it was a devolution, it devolved, and now it's going to
slowly
evolve
kind
back
of,
slowly but surely. We're planning stuff.
That's good. That's good to hear. I think that's positive, and I've got a good feeling the fall's going to be good. I'm kind of hoping, not necessarily for me, it's just for the clubs. I really don't want to see anyone close down. I really don't want to. I really don't want to be like, oh, why aren't we going to this city? And it's like, well, the club's closed down. I really don't want to be in that situation. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everyone's good. I know you guys will be good. We whatever we can do, we'll make sure that you guys are good. And if there's anything I can do, just let me know. 100%.
Oh, thanks, my man. Get yourself back here.
The minute I can, I will jump on a plane and I will play in Chicago. 100%. I actually had a conversation. Jen Lyon from New York. Do you know Jen Lyon? Red, Mean Red.
Oh, yeah. I know of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we do a few parties together in Detroit, and she just hit me up and was like, look, we're planning on doing some stuff in August. And I was like, might be a little bit too soon for me, as much as I'd love to. I'd want to kind of, especially in Detroit, I kind of want to make sure that everything's safe and sound before we kind of start putting parties together. But the minute we can, I'm back doing parties and can't wait. Be good.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I've noticed is not every artist, all artists have different approaches to it. Some artists are like, oh, okay. And I'm sure it could be in part generational as well. But regardless, some guys are like, yeah, I can wait. And some guys are like, wearing to get back.
Yeah.
And, I think that will play out in correlation with that. And I also think it's interesting that certain agents have told me they would, at least in these early days, they basically request that you give them a rundown of everything that you're doing at whatever venues to protect the artists and protect the people that are going, the patrons and all that kind of stuff. And it's the sort of thing that we have to have in place anyway, if we're going to open when we open, so, but I think that artists, that, there are a range of different attitudes that with regard to the coronavirus, depending on who you talk to.
Totally. I think with talking through conversations with my team and stuff like that, it just goes back to that liability thing. It's just not putting anyone at risk. And I know my agents are kind of like, we don't really want to put anyone out until we know a little bit more.
Right.
Which sucks for everyone at the end of the day. Everyone kind of loses out of that. But I think we'll be good. We built this from a struggle, right? Everyone from the ground up struggled in the music industry, and you don't do it just to earn money. Obviously, it is a business, and everyone has to earn money. But I can only speak for myself. But the main reason why I do it is because I absolutely fucking love it. And it will come back at the end of the day. It will come back. It's just how and when. I know in Colorado they put a party on outside. Brennan, Option 4, did a party the other night.
I love Brennan.
Yeah, I love that guy. Had him on the podcast. We had to record 2 podcasts because the first one he did was like he was too stoned. And he literally was just like, I don't even know what he spoke about. He literally didn't breathe. Like, he didn't come up for air for like 45 minutes. Just kept on talking about utter shit. So
great.
That one got deleted. Well, it didn't get deleted, actually. It's still on my hard drive. Might have to release it.
Yeah.
So, guys, let's wrap this one up. Huge thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Let me know when you guys are planning anything. If you need any support with social media or anything like that, I'm more than happy to help. And how can people that haven't heard of you guys follow you? What's your socials and everything like that?
Well, where to start? So my company is Paradigm Presents, and Joe, what's our socials? Our handles.
Yeah. It's at Paradigm Presents across all platforms. That's also DJ John Curley on Instagram, and I think any other social channels that he's on. Mine is at Joe Calderone. Also follow at Spybar. We got a lot of them.
Cool.
Yeah, at Spybar, there's Radius Chicago. I mean, there's a bunch from Prism Nightclub.
Spybar live streams on Twitch every week, every Saturday and Thursday. Got a lot going on.
Go check them out, people.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the shout, and thanks for inviting us. It's
No
always
worries.
a pleasure.
Anytime. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you very soon, hopefully.
Thanks, Will.
Take care, my
Peace out,
man.
guys. So that is a wrap of this week's podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that one. It was a good talk, from some light conversation to some deeper conversations. If you enjoyed it as well, please could you go share it with your mates or your mum or your gran or whoever you think will want to hear it. And if you could hit the review button, I'd love you forever. Keep safe, and I'll speak to you next time.